tell you how this toolkit was built and what ideas are behind. So, of course, this is first of all exchange of good practices. And then you see activities. So it means when you are going to work with your learners on local level, it's very important to understand the structure of toolkit and use in your own way to adapt these materials to your audience. What also is very important in this toolkit, you will find after almost every chapter videos and useful literature, what you can read yourself before your local activities. So, and other thing, it is really very important to have different kind of activities. So, theoretical, and then you can, for example, discuss some quotations. So, as you see here, in each chapter you find useful links, video materials, and some quotations to work in your small groups. Here are explanations how can you organize these activities, step by step, what questions you can ask. Also, it's very important to keep logic, because actually people in our generation, 50 plus, 60 plus, we like to understand some things when it is logically presented. So I think that our toolkit is really good tool for local activities, and we already did many of activities on local level, and I think that not only in our organizations but also in other organizations outside our consortium, this tool will be useful. Thank you.
Today we are going to talk about critical thinking, what it is, and we will define it. There are different ways and possibilities to define critical thinking according to different institutions, universities, and so on. So are becoming to complain about different issues when they feel offended by some situations, yes? Well, it is a consequence of the development of the academic societies, of course. In a way, it's a philosophical question, but still, these issues can cause problems in the multicultural context. In order to be able to solve it, people need to assess what is called critical thinking. Thank you very much. Once again, today we are going to continue to talk about social representations, and we are going to take a tiny case study. And I'll write you one word. Expats. Do you know this word, expats? How would you define this word, expats?
As far as I know, people who are working in other countries.
People who are working in other countries. Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Migrants.
Migrants. Okay, thank you.
Refugees.
Refugees. Okay. Anyone else? So.
Outsiders.
Outsiders. Okay. Different ideas. So there is an article. It was republished in The Guardian, the British newspaper, and the title was the following: Why all white people are expats when the rest of us are immigrants? So the idea of we are talking about social representations. The way social representation is a set of values, beliefs that allow us to communicate, to exchange. Yes. So the word expat most probably was coined by the Western people who are working abroad. So let's say global West, the United States of America, or Europeans when they work in India, in China, or in Thailand. They wouldn't call themselves as the community of immigrants. They would call themselves the community of expats. And when you go on Facebook, for example, and you want to find foreigners, tiny exercise, I would like to ask two volunteers. You would be an artist, and you would be a sculptor, okay? So an artist should shape something from the sculpture. You need to represent power. Power. How you see power? Please represent power. You
Mhm.
power.
According to me.
According to you. Now we change. You have to represent you as sculptor, you are an artist. Now you have to represent masculinity. 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 Like three. Yeah, right. Masculinity. I agree. Wow. Masculinity. The idea of this exercise, and usually we recommend it to do in a very big group with people when we have approximately 30, 40 people. We ask these questions of the representations, and in general, people tend, especially in Europe, or let's say in a bigger Europe, people tend to represent and have similar, very, very similar representations of femininity, masculinity, nature, yes, and so on. So the idea is that in our context, we have some very specific patterns and visions as the representations that are very stable, and they were transmitted from one century to another. And in order to be able to analyze, people need to possess critical thinking skills. Thank you very much. Dear participants, hello. During this session, we are going to present you the toolkit developed explicitly for critical thinking for seniors, Erasmus Plus Strategic Partnership. So, page 32, fake news, why we prefer calling it disinformation. When we're thinking about misinformation, it's this false information which is repeated or transmitted unintentionally. Yes, so there is a difference. When we're thinking about disinformation, there is an intention, and when there is a misinformation, there is no intention. Yes. In order to analyze disinformation and fake news, I would suggest you to think about several concepts. And, agenda setting. Agenda setting is actually the agenda which is created by the mass media, what we are going to talk about. For example, when we have a conflict in Iraq, no one is talking about Iraq anymore. It does not exist in the mainstream media apart of some cases. For example, before the pandemic, many media in the world were talking about the conflict in Syria. Once pandemic arrived, no one is talking about Syria, like nothing really happened there, yes? So the idea of the agenda setting is the following. People within the mass media, sometimes it could be think tanks, they decide what kind of the agenda, what kind of things, not what exactly positive or negative coverage should be, but what exactly we are going to talk about, yes? Was the theory of the broken windows developed by the Dutch scientist. The idea of the theory was the following. People, sociologists and urbanists, they were filming areas of the city where there were broken windows, where there was garbage, tags and so on. And they have realized that people who were going through, passing by these areas, they saw that it's already damaged. And they were okay to add more, cigarette butt, to break bottle. But once they started to clean it little by little, people had a tendency not to pollute this area or degrade it. So there was a positive change. So what they started to do, they also started to fix block by block, fixing buildings, taking tags off, fixing windows, cleaning, pushing garbage bins. So they created a positive social representation of the community. The other thing when we're talking about, so let's remember social representations, media bias. The media bias would be caused by fallacy. Yes, we have also post-truth, where people are playing on your emotions, and we have agenda setting. Any questions?